really taking the reign of controls of the relationship between extraterrestrial civilizations back into our own hands, because the government has mucked it up so badly. And I'm sitting here in Washington. I'm actually looking at the White House and Washington Monument out my window, and I have a lot of meetings here. I have a little pianets here in Washington, and I know everyone's always saying, when is the government going to deal with this? I said, the only time the government is going to deal with this is when it's down the barrel of a gun to scare the hell out of people that there's a threat from outer space. They are not going to deal with it in any peaceful, enlightened way. So that's up to us. That's what we, the people, have to do. And it isn't going to happen any other way. And like most movements in history, it's everyday people stepping up to the plate and doing it. And I will tell you that the number one, are you guys going out tonight?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the number one thing that determines the outcome is the coherence of the group and what your intentions are. In other words, what's in your heart? You know, is there purity of intent? I've always said that an Aboriginal in Australia with, you know, a campfire and a pure intent would have a better chance of making contact than anyone I've ever met at NASA. So I think that what they're looking for, what these civilizations are looking for, are people who are peaceful, people who are doing this not just as an entertainment for themselves. They don't care about being dolphins and SeaWorld for you guys, but people who really want to begin to establish a relationship between human and extraterrestrial civilizations, because we're 70, 80 years into an era when we should have had, certainly by the time Eisenhower met with an ET there at Muroc in California in 1956, we should have had an open relationship that was peaceful. That all got hijacked by a cabal of sociopaths who are addicted to war. And so the only solution I see to it is people like you guys stepping out, go out into the stars, do this with the right purpose. And I think that that is the thing that will most determine. Now, there are a lot of protocols in terms of meditation and remote viewing and all of that. But that's, in a way, that if you're a really great remote viewer, but you're a sociopath, and you're wanting to do something for a selfish reason, they're not going to come. I don't give a goddamn if you're, you know, the head of remote viewing for the CIA. The ETs are not going to show up. So, my French. So I think that the thing that's going to make the most difference is what is your intention? You know, if your intention is pure and it's for creating a peaceful relationship between humans and these other civilizations, the protocols will happen. They're going to pick up on the fact you're doing this. And if you're not, then it won't happen. I like telling the story of a man who came some years ago. We used to go every year to Crestone, Colorado. And every time this man showed up, there was no UFO or ET activity anywhere around. But whenever he would, you know, leave or have to go take a break, they'd show up. I found out later that the main reason he was embedding himself into my organization was that he wanted to be the next Rockefeller of energy and figure out how the spacecraft operated so he could be filthy rich and become a trillionaire. And they knew that that was what his intention was. I didn't. It dawned on me later. I knew there was something not copacetic. But the very famous event that happened in 1996 at Joshua Tree, when the first year we went there, this man was there. But we moved, we were at one location, and I was getting a message that it's not right to do it here. And at that time, I used to do these trainings with like 60 people. It was really quite complicated. Now, when I do them, it's with 25 people. But I said, we need to move to another location. And I kind of remote viewed where they were wanting us to go. So we packed up everyone. This guy was in one of those big RVs, and he was delayed. And when we were going to this new site up in Joshua Tree at Geology Tour Road, about a 300-foot diameter disc materialized and came straight down out of the sky and into the earth and showed us where they wanted us to be, literally at that side of Geology Tour Road. And everyone saw that and was part of that experience except this guy. And it turns out he had an ulterior motive that was not clear. It was selfish. It was self-centered instead of altruistic for humanity. So you need to get yourself clear about why you're doing this. If you're doing it just to go see a UFO, don't go out, because I can show you thousands of pictures of UFOs. You need to do it because you're wanting to put yourself as an ambassador to these civilizations, because there ain't none. There's none at the State Department, the United Nations. I know all these people. They really want us to do that. We the people need to step up and do this. So one of the key things is also the more people who do it, like you have a pretty large group there, when you're in coherence and in quiet meditation with that intention, it has an effect that you may not even see. It will be through other dimensions within the worlds of light and within astral and within other realms. But they'll know that you're doing it. And you can establish a connection to these civilizations that'll be ongoing once you make that link, because they're looking for good people to do this. And I know that, as we've said, we need 1% of a population to begin to do something that's positive to shift the other 99%. And actually some of this science that's been done in quantum physics and the science of consciousness, it shows the effect, the powerful effect coherence and consciousness has, even on people that don't even know what you're doing. The research on that is quite clear. And we're going to put some of that in this new movie we're doing, the CE5film.com. You may have heard of this. But this is the next big project we're doing is CE5film.com. Unacknowledged, thanks to all you guys supporting it. It was crowdfunded, has been seen by over 200 million people in the first year that it was out. Now, most of those were on black sites like Pirate Bay and others, but the word has gotten out. Now, this next one is going to be a call to action for people to do what you're doing. We're looking to get 75 million people involved in doing CE-5 and making contact, because that's 1% of the global population. So we need your help with that. It's all crowdfunded. We don't have a big production company doing the funding on this. All these tasks that we take on, we want to maintain clarity of the message, which you lose if you have a big network funded. For example, if Netflix funds something, they're going to control content and they're going to edit it. We don't want that. We want to create something. If it ends up on these other platforms, fine. But we want to be able to ensure that the message is the clear message and not something that a bunch of sociopaths in Hollywood and the media want to dictate. So the only way we can do that is to have you guys support it. So if you go to CE5film.com, you'll see that we raised almost 40% of what we're trying to get, and we're about $262,000 as of today. And we're well on our way in production. We're going into post-production very soon. So any help you guys can provide, that's great. So I'm going to open up to some questions. You guys have some questions, I suspect, or no?
Do we have a question for Steve?
Are you going to do any events in Texas?
Yes, if you're going to do any events in Texas, Steve.
Well, you know, I only do about 3 of these a year now, and because I'm just too busy. And it's really about a place that's reliably dry, good weather, good climate, private. So we tend to go to places that are desert areas and not going to be soppy, because people come in from all over the world. So we did an event at what's that place called? Enchanted Rock. Austin. You know Enchanted? Yeah, outside Austin in the Hill Country. A couple years ago, I guess. And I think that's the only one we've done in Texas. But, you know, we're always in the Southwest, not far from where you guys are. I'm getting ready to go up to Arizona, outside Tucson. Oracle, ironically, is the name of this place. And we're going up on a mountaintop and in the middle of the state park where there's a retreat center, and there are, you know, people coming in from all over the world. And that's where we've had, you may have heard the story of this man. We just interviewed him. He was there a year or 2 ago, and we had a red sphere flash in between a friend of mine and this older gentleman who had had permanent hearing loss since he was in his teens. And we got it on film, and on the photograph, it's an ET, sort of a triangular head-shaped ET about 5 feet tall, standing right beside this man who he had had a connection with. That ET continued to be connected to him throughout the night. And by the next morning, his permanent hearing loss was reversed. And this is a species, some people say they look similar to a praying mantis, this is a triangular head, but they're master healers, they're amazing healers. And these are a civilization we've had contact with. And by the way, there are thousands of civilizations involved with this project, and I say this advisedly. But there are certain ones that keep appearing that have a certain function. And so that's where we're going back in 2 weeks from yesterday. I'm flying out, but it begins 2 weeks from tomorrow on Sunday. So, you know, if you get on our email list at seriousdisclosure.com, we'll notify you when we're going to do one of these things in your area or wherever. So, and in a way, it's sort of you build it and they will come. If someone sets it up and can sort of find a place for us to do this that's a suitable, dry, private location on a lot of land, then there's a better chance to go there.
We're having a lot of rain here today, Steve, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that it's going to be okay for tonight.
Well,
Yeah, I don't like that here, but that's why I tend to go for the desert Southwest and West Coast during dry season because it's reliable weather. You know, but for that reason, it's just so you know, it's a shame you bring people from all over the world for a whole week to do this, and then you're sitting in the rain all week.
Anybody else have a quick question? I know Steve has a meeting right away. He's got to go up front.
I can ask a few questions.
Dr. Greer, thanks for being able to offer this session for us here today. My question is two-part, very simple though. If you could share with us, why is it important that we study this phenomenon, and what's the greatest thing we can learn from doing this?
Well, the reason it's important is that it's the human future. It's knocking on our front and back door. It's the future of the human race to become interstellar, sustainable, at least a level 1 civilization. We're not there yet. And it's also a glimpse into the human future, not only technologically, but in higher states of consciousness. Because any civilization that's going from one star system to another is actually traversing other dimensions that are increasingly conscious, and the so-called realms of thought and light and what have you. And this is done technologically, but it's also something where there's a corollary in the development of consciousness that goes along with it. So the development of higher states of consciousness is the leading indicator for higher technologies, without which our civilization is doomed. I mean, we simply can't be using fossil fuels and nuclear power forever. So that time actually should have been over in the mid-20th century. By the time I was born in the mid-50s, we should have not been using any fossil fuels at that point. And we're beginning to see the cost of not dealing with this issue properly. So it's social, it's spiritual, and it's technological, it's civilizational. And so it's the most important thing that anyone could be doing, even though because of ridicule and marginalization, which has been done very well by the intelligence community, there's, you know, the subject is sort of the stepchild of science. However, the science on it is clear. That's why we did the Disclosure Project. And even the technologies that are behind these spacecraft, these have been well understood for probably 60 some years. And, you know, meanwhile, we're destroying the biosphere. I think that all of that is secondary to the relationship, because we're viewed, I mean, I just so everyone's always, you know, getting their panties in a wad over whether or not, you know, the aliens are out to get us. I'm going, yeah, well, here's the fact. We're the trouble. The human species is destroying its own biosphere, has killed hundreds of millions of its own people in the past century, has put weapons in space that are targeting ET craft. So there needs to be, it's sort of an emergency situation. That's why I left my emergency medical career to do this, is that no one is minding this store who is someone who has the best interest of the human future at heart. The people who are in control of this within classified projects, they're doing it for very selfish reasons, or reasons that would redound to the benefit of the military and financial complex by creating a threat. And this is one of my big concerns with what's happening in the whole UFO field right now, is that there's a big push that's going mainstream media from different entities, I don't want to go into it, that are attempting to put out some evidence and attach to the evidence a threat.
Yep.
And the long-term goal, as Werner von Braun told us, was to create and hoax an alien threat so we could unite the world around a military junta, a military dictatorship that would basically be presented kind of like the movie Independence Day. When Will Smith said, let's go kick alien butt and unite the world. And, you saw the Arabs and people from all over uniting, fight the aliens. Well, that sort of narrative has been in play for over 60 years. And what I see is that they're building up to pull the trigger on that. And the only thing between absolute catastrophe and that are people like you making peaceful contact with these civilizations. Because you have to take a step and look through the ET's eyes. What do they see when they see this planet? All right, they're good people on this planet. But in terms of people reaching out to them and interacting with them, most of those people have been militarists and doing it for technological reasons or selfish reasons and violent reasons. So we need a non-violent approach. And it's sort of what I say, this is civil disobedience on a cosmic scale. And I remind people, I grew up in the South in the time of Martin Luther King, and I had a African-American girlfriend was almost murdered because I had an African-American girlfriend back in those days in the early 70s in North Carolina. And I tell people that humans are very prone towards going towards violence, towards anything they don't understand, looks different, acts different. And we have to go beyond that. And the foundation for that, this is the most important thing you should learn, is that the nature of the conscious mind itself. There's no color to mind. There's no gender. There's no sexual. Consciousness itself is a universal constant between us and ETs and each other. It is the deep spiritual foundation of oneness. And so experiencing these deep and quiet states of consciousness is the foundation for being an ambassador to these civilizations. And so I think that's one of the really big takeaways from this. And to the extent you experience that state, the more the ETs are going to recognize you as an ambassador. They're going to see you as somebody who's ready, because you're not taking this from just even a humanistic point of view. You're looking at it at a universal level. I don't know if that answers your question.
Great, yeah.
Yes.
Very good.
That's what I wanted to say.
Very good question and a great answer, Steve. Thank you so much. Let's see, anybody else have a question for Steve? Go ahead.
Dr. Greer,
Yep.
Next year we're going to be setting up a center with a landing pad to try to make open contact. What do you recommend at the physical level for us to prepare for open contact with the extraterrestrial face-to-face?
I don't think the material exigencies matter. The only thing that matters in terms of a facility is security, because what I've seen in doing this now, well, I had my first CE-5 experience when I was 18, and I'll be 64 next month, so you can do the math, long time. And what I think is that there is a need that for a place where ETs feel safe, a safe space. And the reason for that is, and there's really no way that any private group right now can secure the airspace over a site, because the military have satellites and weapon systems up there, and when an ET comes fully into this dimension, it's picked up on immediately, and you'll see if it happens tonight, there will be jets and what have you scrambled in. So in terms of facility, until we resolve this problem with the militaristic approach to the ETs, a physical facility in and of itself is irrelevant. It's more, who are the people there? Are the people who are there safe? Can the ETs come into this dimension? They don't need to have a spacecraft. They can materialize like the one did at Oracle a couple of years ago, right beside you, and then appear and do things. So, and these are physical ETs, but they're in the near astral. They're visible if you learn to see with the very subtle vision. So they're not always 3D. When you're talking about a full-on 3D landing event, that's the least likely thing to have happen. B, if it does happen, you better have your special forces mindset on, because you're going to get a site invasion very quickly. We have, every time we've had an actual ET craft fully materialized. We had this happen about a month ago in a remote site in California. There were aircraft that were vectored in that then circled our site for 3 hours because of this object that came up from a hill, and we got it videotaped. But the point I'm making is that when you're looking at a physical facility, you know, remoteness, safety, security, all that's important, privacy, at least controlled for the fact that there may not be, you know, nearby hunters or farmers coming in with shotguns and stuff shooting at the ETs, which unfortunately has happened. So I think that security is number one in terms of physical location that you're doing this. But you need to understand that anytime that there's an actual ET craft that's in this dimension full on, now it may be partially in this dimension and it's not totally solid yet. And this is where you really need to study how interstellar civilizations are also trans-dimensional and can move amongst dimensions even around you, where they may or may not be visible with the naked eye. They may be picked up by an electronic system, such as our radar detectors and magnetometers. It may be picked up by a video system because the digital light cells will pick up an object that our eyes can't see. But when it's fully 3D, I will say that until we can stand down the assets that are all over the world, it doesn't matter what country you're in, that the military have deployed, it's a risky proposition. And this is not to scare anyone. It's just to say the reality of it is the assets that are out there that humans have would blow your mind in terms of what their capabilities are. And for that reason, we always say we ask the ETs to appear in any way that's safe and appropriate for them to appear. And we'll leave it to them as to what's safe. Now, it could be someone's asleep at the switch at NORAD or someplace on a satellite reconnaissance system, and they can come on full in. But ultimately, it will be detected. As Ben Rich, the head of the Lockheed Skunk Works, said in 1990s, he said, there are no private conversations anywhere on Earth, and any place that you can imagine is seen in real time. It was crystal clear daylight. So even as early as 1968, we had satellite systems that could see anyone anywhere in the world through cloud cover, and if you're reading a book, they could read the newsprint on the book. So that is not myth, that is true. So you need to have a realistic sense of the fact that we're doing this as pioneers. This is a pioneering effort within the milieu, the environment of a very heavily weaponized adversary that has had trillions and trillions of dollars to develop technologies to track and target these ET craft. So the main thing we say is, it could be that a craft could come fully materialize and be there for some amount of time, and then it might just dematerialize. You may not know why, but they may have picked up a sensor that just hit them from a satellite. And the satellite systems that are up there can actually pick up ET craft when they're coming out of trans-dimensional space-time into 3D. It leaves a signature, and there's a thing called a neutrino light detector a man I know invented back in the 70s that's on these satellites that can pick up the subtle energy signature of an ET craft when it's moving out of faster than the speed of light, sort of dematerialized form into 3D. And it leaves a very distinctive signature, trace. And so at that point, they're going to lock onto it and either try to destroy it or capture it or do something. So remember what we're doing. We're a peace organization, universal peace organization, doing this within the environment of a heavily weaponized and militarized planet that most people don't even know exists. So when you're looking at doing a specific place, just remember all these things factor in. It doesn't change what you're going to do because ultimately the ETs are going to know when it's safe. They're going to know who's nearby. But I'd say if you're really wanting to put effort into this, look to your inner self, your state of consciousness, your heart, your purpose. That, I'll just tell you that when you're in the zone of being in the right place, the most amazing things happen. It's beautiful. And I know they'll blow your mind. So I would be less concerned about externals than I would be internal, the internal environment within ourselves. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Steve. If you have time for one more question, there's somebody waiting. Do you have a second, or do you have to go?
Sure. Yeah, one more. It's fine.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Greer. So my question, I personally believe, and I know I have a number of friends that also interact with ETs, that also believe that perhaps we are what one would call starseeds, or have incarnated into this incarnation with a mission for humanity. I've had dreams and done past life regressions where, for me, this seems very, very real. And I gather that one large part of this mission could be to establish these protocols and help humanity establish contact protocols and expand to, the 75 million people, or the number of people that we would need to reach to hit a critical mass.
Yep.
So
1%.
yeah. So, but have you gathered any knowledge of this, or given any thought to the reality of like something like a starseed program? I know that that term is something that's in popular culture a lot, and has probably been.
Yeah, I try to avoid the sort of pop culture lexicon that usually is parroted by people who have no idea what they're talking about. You're going to find I'm a very blunt person in a small audience. It's very disturbing, but my view of it is everyone is starseed. All of us have come from, humans didn't just appear out of apes instantly. All right, so we're all part of a cosmic family. And one of the things that I always tell people, there are some people who say, I'm this or I'm that. I say, we all are, so get over yourselves. And I think that, so in fact, everyone on this planet are part of a cosmic family, whether they recognize it or not, that goes back, hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of years, even predating Homo sapiens per se. So keep in mind, there have been civilizations, advanced civilizations on the planet, of which we have no record, and there have been ET presence on this planet since at least probably, I would say, 700 million to 1 billion years, and maybe longer. Yeah. So I think that we have to understand that everyone is, in a sense, starseed. Because the question is, how do you awaken in someone the consciousness that is this universal aspect of themselves, where they can actually be in contact with any civilization, doesn't matter who and where they're from, because you can't unless you're grounded in this sense of the universality of mind, consciousness. As Erwin Schrödinger said, the total number of minds in the universe is one. It's a singularity. So not what you're aware of, but the pure essence of consciousness, that's universal. So the more we're established and connect to that, the more we're going to be able to relate to not only each other in a deeper, more meaningful way, but also to these other civilizations, because the whole motto of the CE-5 organization is one universe, one people. There's really one living people in the cosmos, and we are they, and they are we. So once you see that on a deeper level, it goes beyond genetics, let's say, and social and cultural biases. You begin to realize that that's really a beautiful reality, and everyone can then, by experiencing that state of consciousness, have contact with various civilizations and also different types of human beings. I mean, we still haven't healed the human situation yet, where we're still murdering each other over religion and race and sexual orientation and everything. Stupid. And so the only way we're going to get past all of that is to find what is the foundation of our existence with each other and with these other civilizations. To the extent that you're aware of that, to that extent the ETs are going to be in contact with you. That is the single most important thing for anyone to come into realization on. And from that point of view, then everyone will awaken to their, quote, starseed reality within themselves, because it's universal. Yeah. We are all a universal being.
That's great. And then in terms of the 1%, and this might be kind of grim, but isn't the human population increasing at an exponential rate that would make the 1% number increase at a challenging rate?
I'm not sure of the question.
I'm just asking in terms of the critical mass and the number of people that would need to be reached compared to the ever-increasing human population.
Let me try to repeat it for you, Steve. He's just saying, since human civilization is increasing at such a rate, isn't the 1% also increasing at a challenging rate?
Yeah, but it's a rounding error in terms of how rapidly. The reality is that probably you don't need 1% if the people who are aligned and coherent are in a more powerful, higher state of consciousness. It was said once that if you had one enlightened man or human being on each continent, it would transform that continent. So I think that it's really about, the reason the 1% is so important is that this whole morphogenic field propagation and the effect that they found in social and cultural experiments. For example, they'd send 1% of a population, say you have a city of 20,000 people, and you would send in 200 people to meditate for a couple weeks in that city. Crime rates would fall, coherence would go up, all kinds of negative and violent proclivities would get reduced. And these studies have been reproduced. And what it indicates is that we're affecting each other when we're in that state of peaceful consciousness in ways that we don't know intellectually, but it's because the conscious mind is one, it's a singularity. It has this profound effect when a lot of people begin to move in that direction. And the same is true of social movements. I mean, if you look at women's rights, the civil rights movement, gay rights, all kinds of movements, what Gandhi did in India, it didn't take, it's usually a fairly small minority that actually instigate and cause that kind of change. So I always tell people, we're so wired towards, it has to be 51% for change to happen. No, it has to be a determined and enlightened very small percent, probably this 1% for that to happen. So I just tell people, don't worry about, just see that you're part of that coherent movement towards peace and a universal civilization.
Thank you.
And that's the best we can do. The whole purpose of this next documentary is to reach hundreds of millions of people with that message and have them start experimenting with this and see if we can't move our civilization away from this extinction level event we're headed towards onto the path of safety.
Well, Steve, I know you've got another meeting. Listen, we as a group want to thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us.
Anything for you, babe. Thank you. I appreciate the work you guys are doing. Good luck tonight. Hope it dries up for you.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Bye.
That was awesome.